Hi and welcome. My name is Rob Scott from UC Today and welcome to another monthly Microsoft Teams news update. As always, I'm joined by Tom Arbuthnot, UC Solutions Architect and MVP. And together, we're going to be talking through the most popular Teams headlines. Plus, after this news edition, we'll be diving into some open Teams Q&A with today's panel of special guests, including Randy Chapman, Kevin Keeler and Owen Lazar, and more. So watch this space. Welcome, Tom. How's it going?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. Yeah, it's been busy as usual, and we're ramping up for Ignite, which will be the really busy week, and UC Expo. But there's still been quite a lot of news this month as well.
Yeah, it certainly does. It feels like things are really revving up, as you say. Summer's now done and dusted. We are now looking towards event season. I think October's a mad month, isn't it, for events?
Yeah, it's really back to back. So we're just, as we record, we're just coming into that. But yeah, UC Expo, South Coast Summit and Ignite all pretty much the same week. It's going to be a busy week.
Indeed. Okay, well, let's hit the news. What's top of mind this month? I think the first thing we said, we'd have a little celebration, Tom, that you've reached 1,000 members on Empowering.Cloud.
Yeah, we're really pleased. So we just took over 1,000 members. So we launched Commsverse at the end of June, and we've been steadily putting content up and had lots of content from subject matter experts in as well. And yeah, just tipped over 1,000. So long way to go still, but really pleased with the engagement so far, and the community has been great.
Yeah, hats off to you. Well done. You must be doing something right with 1,000 members so soon. So well done.
Thanks.
Next up, we said we'd talk about Microsoft Teams optimized for Apple silicon chips. I mean, tell us more on that. And, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so Apple have their own silicon, their own chips, the M1, the M2. And for the longest time, Teams has run in an emulated mode where it was written for Intel and Apple would emulate Intel. And Teams has taken a while, but now it has a completely native code base. And what that means for the user is just a much more performant experience in Teams. So snappier reaction, better performance in Teams when on a Mac, a native M1 or M2.
Super. And was there a time in the past where Teams was a little bit resource hungry on the Mac, or was that just a software thing and that's done and dusted? Or
yeah, I mean, definitely. So Teams uses a technology called Electron, which allows it to be multi-platform, and Microsoft are moving away from that on Windows as well. But yeah, definitely, Electron is known for being quite resource hungry and suboptimal. It's not written natively. So the fact that Microsoft now have an Apple native experience, yeah, you should see reduced resource usage, reduced battery usage for sure.
Excellent. Nice move there for the Apple users will be happy. Okay. Next up, we said to talk about live professional language interpretation on Teams. So this is quite an interesting one. Tell us how this works. And this is an accessibility feature, right?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So obviously you've got ability to do subtitles in Teams, but this is actually having rather than AI doing interpretation, you can bring in a live interpreter. In a meeting, you can set them as the interpreter. So certain people in the meeting can listen to the interpreter at a high volume and have you, the presenter, at a lower volume. So like you sometimes see on TV where you have a live interpreter. So you still get a feel for the tone of the original speaker, but the dominant volume is on the interpreter. And a lot of organizations have this requirement where they want, rather than having computers do it, which is obviously never going to be 100%, they will spend the money to have an interpreter come in and do real live interpretation of the meeting.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's a very specific use case there, but a fantastic feature nonetheless. Moving on to another one that Microsoft just announced, they're now selling eCDN. I mean, the Enterprise Content Delivery Network. Tell us a little bit about that. Just set the scene for us, though, in terms of what that means exactly for Teams users.
Yeah, it's a very specific use case. It's Enterprise Content Delivery Network. So this is the ability to, rather than when, say, 1,000 or multiple thousands of people join a meeting, rather than each independently join and have a stream from the meeting in the cloud to their computers, there's a set of technology that will reduce the number of concurrent streams, essentially share them between the PCs joining. So the use case is you're a bank with a quarterly meeting and you have 3,000 people turning up. So a kind of broadcast meeting type scenario, but you don't want all those people sat at desks to all individually have a couple of megabytes streaming from the internet, because it will choke the internet connectivity from the office to the internet. So this technology allows you to reduce those number of concurrent streams, but still serve everybody. And this particular technology is a company called Peer 5 that Microsoft acquired. I think what's interesting is we see Microsoft here acquiring a company, and often they bundle services, but they're adding a SKU here to sell this as an uplift. So it's not applicable to every Teams customer by any stretch, but those that need it, they now have a native offer from Microsoft, as well as a number of third-party eCDNs that work with Teams as well.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for explaining that. It makes a little bit more sense now. But okay, for more information, we're going to put a link in the description on that one, so you can have a look at the official Microsoft announcement on that. Anyway, next up, we said we'd talk about a new certification from Microsoft. That's Microsoft Teams Backup and Restore certification. Tell us more on that one.
Yeah, this is a brand new certification from Microsoft. And normally certifications announced with quite a big fanfare, but this one came out relatively quietly. Veeam and Rubrik are the first two ISVs to be certified. And it's the ability to use a new API, a new Teams export API. What's particularly interesting about this API is it is a consumption chargeable model. So you, the customer or the ISV, have to pay on a usage basis to pull data out of Teams. And Microsoft are moving customers from a different model where they would try and pull the data out of Exchange to this more official compliance API. But it'll be interesting to see how the market reacts. And actually, even between Veeam and Rubrik, it's quite differently. So Veeam are pushing that cost onto the customer, and the customer absorbs the consumption cost. Rubrik are incorporating that cost into their per user licensing and kind of taking the hit on it. So it'd be interesting to see how different ISVs use that backup API and where the costs go.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think we're going to see, this kind of solution from more vendors going forward?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, Microsoft are pushing towards using this API rather than pulling the data out of Exchange. It seems like in the case of this certification, it's relatively early. So Microsoft often have a few ISVs they work with closely to get the initial certification set, and then they'll expand it out. So I would expect to see the other backup and restore vendors coming out with this certification relatively soon.
Yeah, fantastic. We just had a comment on the line here from Simon Leyland saying the monetization of Teams. He suspects this is something we're going to see more and more of going forward. Would you agree?
It does feel that way. It feels like Microsoft are looking for opportunities to add extra value, extra SKUs. I mean, they obviously have an incredibly large user base, but most of that is part of those E3, E5 bundle subs. So they're obviously looking at ways to push up their average money per customer or money per seat. And you see that in the financial results. They often talk about the average spend per user and trying to push that number up.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of cashing in on Teams, the next update we said we'd talk about was actually taking payments in Teams meetings. Talk us through this one, Tom, and what's the typical use case here?
Yeah, this one surprised me a little bit. I guess it's more of an SMB kind of mid-market type scenario, but it's the ability to plug in a third-party payment provider into the meeting so that during the meeting, a customer can make a payment directly in the meeting. So I think Zoom and Google already have this type of functionality. So I guess the scenario is you're doing a webinar or a sales pitch, and you can literally have the customer transact during the meeting. So yeah, Microsoft are adding that too. It's on the roadmap. No like hard timeline, but it looks like it's going to be the next month or two, and it'll be an option for customers to add that payment provider.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, a nice feature, I'm sure, for quite a number of organizations or people. One feature that I've been waiting for such a long time is sending Teams chat on a schedule. And that's our next feature update, is that Microsoft have finally solved this for me personally, by the sounds of things. Tom, tell us more on this one.
Yeah, this is interesting because I'm not completely convinced by this, and I've had a fun debate. There was a massive thread on LinkedIn. The use case is, you can schedule send. So you're checking messages on Saturday. You want to send something to your team member. They don't work till Monday, so you don't want to interrupt them in their personal time. You set it literally a timer to say send on Monday morning. It's obviously a nice feature to be respectful to your colleagues. What I don't really like is that it's training the sender to be the person taking responsibility for when a message is sent. So I work with teams literally all over the world. I often don't know what time zone the particular person I'm working with is in. The receiver, or me in the case of I'm the receiver, I have the ability to change my alert, so I can set myself as offline. I can set myself as do not disturb on my mobile, on my desktop. And I feel like generally the philosophy should be the receiver should decide when they want to be notified. Now, I know that's an imperfect stance because people clearly feel pressured from their boss. If the message comes in, they're going to want to reply to it. So I kind of get both sides of the coin. So it's nice to have the option, but I just hope we're training users to say, like, you're responsible for when you check your messages and when you have your client signed in, signed out, or do not disturb, or no notifications. So, but I've heard a lot of people go completely the other way and say they're super excited about it, particularly if they work with a team they mostly know, they're mostly in the same time zone, and they like catching up on messages on a weekend, but they don't want to push that pressure on their team.
Yeah, I really like the feature. I do a lot of sends, based on time, because I work all silly hours, and I find it much more polite to,
Maybe I'm just less polite than you, Rob. That's the problem.
I say polite. I say polite. Some people, get literally 10 emails from me at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, and I feel like they've just been hit with a machine gun. But I think the use case is really good. I think if within an internal domain, Microsoft could probably do something a little bit more intelligent, like, this person's off today. Do you want to send it Tuesday? Or this person doesn't work this day. Do you want to send it on Monday?
I'm 100% with you. I'd love the button or a tick box to be like, send this at the next appropriate time, and not have me think about it. Because Microsoft, you're right. Microsoft knows your hours. They even know when you're logged in and logged out. They know a whole lot about you. They could intelligently know, and you can set your working hours in things like Outlook. So you could just say, send this at the next appropriate time. But I still feel like you're making a judgment on that person. They might choose to work, non-traditional hours, and you're holding your message up waiting for them. But yeah, maybe I'm just not as polite, and I should set all my messages at the weekend to only send on a Monday.
Yeah, it's a good one though. I like it, and then we're getting a few comments in the comments feed right now, just saying that they like the feature as well. They'd like to see it, kind of maybe teams show the time zone the individuals in as well. I suppose that's going to be really useful for organizations that are across the globe as well. So
definitely.
Good. Okay. Well, next up, we said we talk about hardware. So Logitech is first on with the Logitech Brio 500 and 505 cameras, now certified for Teams. Tell us more about these. Are these going to finally kind of supersede the Brio that we've been using all this time?
Yeah, good question. So, I like to keep an eye on what's been certified for Teams. And this month, the big one was this new Brio 500 and 505. Interestingly, it's not really a spiritual successor to the Brio that we know, the 4K Ultra high end. It's more of a kind of mid market, so it's RRP $129, but it's a 1080 camera, so it has a 4 megapixel sensor, it has like new processing, it has AI auto framing, and it also has this cool flip mode where you might have seen this from the Apple keynote, the kind of down on desk view. So you flip the camera down, it'll change the rotation, and you can do writing on a pad or drawing or showing things, which is really popular in things like education where they're trying to teach. So it's not really a replacement for the Brio Ultra, and I think we'll see more technology coming from Logitech in this Brio lineup, but I must admit I have a soft spot for Logi's hardware. I have quite a lot of it in play, and it's a really they're a safe pair of hands for things like webcams. So for a nice price point, USB-C and this AI auto framing, I think it looks really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Randy Chapman on feeds also just mentioned there's a headset coming soon as well. That's about to be certified for Teams as well. So yeah, they never stop innovating over at Logitech, do they?
No, they're very busy, and they're kind of getting to the point where they have a really nice ecosystem between the headsets, the webcams, the docks. They're making some interesting plays for sure.
Super. Right. Well, last but not least, we said we'd talk about some events before we go on to open Q&A. We've got a whole host of events, as we mentioned at the start. So the first up, it's UC Expo, 12th and 13th of October. Tom, are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there, yeah. As usual, it's a very big show in London, and it's a good one for all the communities to get together. I've got sessions on both days. So the first day, I've got a panel with a number of large customers, and we're talking specifically about success at scale. So those tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of users, which we're lucky to have EY on there, Burberry, Pearson, some Microsoft representation as well. And then I'm doing a big AMA with a number of people actually on the call in the audience as well. Just opening the floor to everybody as to what Teams questions they want answered. So I love those kind of informal format sessions. And then the following day, doing a session with Microsoft on voice options, and a session with Erwin around kind of adoption and change management, which again is a really, really hot topic for customers who have mostly got this technology now, but are still working out how they can make the most of it and optimize it.
Yeah, I think that's always a challenge with technology is, getting the best out of that investment ultimately. Yeah, ongoing. Next up, a small event in the Microsoft world. Microsoft Ignite is back, 12th to the 14th of October. So very close to, or slightly overlapping UC Expo, and very close to some other events. What's going on this year?
Yeah, so this is Microsoft's all-up customer-facing event. So it's a huge event because it covers their entire technology stack. And they're doing a little bit of in-person, but it's very hybrid. They're doing a couple of thousand people in Seattle and some satellite events, but mostly it's online. And from a Teams point of view, it'll be quite an interesting one because we're going to get a lot around the room systems and the rooms roadmap. We got the license change that we talked about last month on the pod. We'll start to see more of what that means and what's coming. And there's some other sessions around things like Operator Connect Mobile and other voice advances as well. So it'll be really interesting. And no doubt next month we'll have plenty to talk about from a Microsoft News point of view.
Yeah, and I'd like to go personally as well. I'm not going this year, but I'd love to just see the kind of the fallout of the pandemic and kind of the last couple of years of Ignite, because it's been massively disrupted and it's all gone online. Just to see how that's maybe starting to unfold now as well. Now things are starting to settle down a bit. Whether hybrid is the future. What's the split between remote and in-person attendees kind of thing?
Yeah, so Microsoft are working really hard to make the hybrid experience kind of a first-party experience, so you don't have to be there. But it'll be interesting to see if we get back to the old Ignite and kind of tech ed days of 15, 16, 17,000 people all in the same place. There's something about that. I know it's not the most environmentally friendly thing to do to have 20,000 people all fly to a place, but there was always something about getting together that was special.
Yeah, and we're starting to see a lot more community events now, aren't we, as well? And that takes us nicely on to another event, South Coast Summit on the 15th of October. That's another quite small niche event, and you're going to be talking at that event. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're doing another AMA actually, which is my kind of favorite thing at the moment. That time we've got some Microsoft product team members on the Ask Microsoft Anything panel, so that'll be really good fun. Yeah, this is actually a full stack technology event in the UK, and the key thing is it's on a Saturday as well. So there's a Friday kind of warm up day, and then the Saturday. So a lot of people that can't get away in the week actually really enjoy this show. It's South Coast, so it's quite a nice place to be as well. So that should be a fun one. The 15th of October is the main day.
Indeed. And last but not least on our list, definitely worth mentioning as well, because of the massive amount of, I suppose, focus that Microsoft have right now on customer engagement. The Call and Contact Center Expo is back again, and that's on the 22nd and 23rd of November. Will you be there?
Yeah, I'll be there again. And yeah, you're right. It's interesting. This wouldn't have traditionally been a show I would have spoken at, but I spoke the last year and I'm speaking again this year. And there was a big turnout for your Teams contact center options. There's a lot of interest in those customers in that market about Teams, and do we buy a Teams integrated contact center? Can we use Teams natively? How do we integrate? Do we have to integrate? And obviously now Microsoft are throwing in their digital contact center into the mix as well, it's even more relevant. So I'll be there on the first day, and I'm doing a session on Teams and your contact center options.
Great. And not so much an online, an in-person event. We've got Teams Fireside Chat, Tom. That starts every first Thursday of every month. Is that correct? Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. So we've been doing this for a while, actually. It's been going really well. We've got it's just a Teams meeting that we do on the first Thursday of every month. We hit 4:00 in the UK PM to try and hit the US morning as well. And we always have a subject matter expert in. So for October's, we've got Michael Borman, who's like an EMEA partner lead for Teams Rooms. So anything around Teams Rooms, Teams Room training, he's in the mix there. And it's really informal. It's just we'll jump on, have a bit of a conversation, ask lots of questions. But we're regularly getting over 100 people turning up and just kind of chewing the fat around Teams. So I'm really enjoying that.
Thanks, Tom. Another fantastic month of news from Microsoft Teams. Lots happening there. Let's go over to our guest today to see who's got what questions or opinions on anything Microsoft Teams. So here we go. Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Oh, it's good. Well, hi, Rob. Hi, Tom. Thanks for the news update, as always.
No worries. Thanks for coming on.
So
Good to see you. Yeah, go on, fire away.
So I had a question. I mean, there was a couple of, announcements around, payment and meetings, and then the content delivery network. So all of that, is around perhaps using Teams. You have Teams webinar, and then you have Teams live events. And I get questions about, webinar has the registration function, but you seem to still have to have a Microsoft account, and live events seems, have different capabilities. What are you seeing in terms of these features coming together? Because I think right now we've got the typical Microsoft way of there's multiple tools to do the same thing, and it seems to be confusing a lot of my customers and, quite frankly, confusing me on most days.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone on that. So obviously Microsoft did have two different technologies there. They've got the live events, which is giant CDN, up to tens of thousands of users in a meeting, and they've had it that high, which is really a broadcast scenario. It's not a interactive scenario. And then you've got Teams meetings, and it used to be the difference was very clear. Teams meetings were small, they were sub 250, and live events were large. But then Teams meetings have got bigger. I think where Microsoft are going very slowly is live events are an overflow beyond the 1,000 people in the Teams meeting. So it will flip you over to a view-only model. And they have talked about that previously. But there are subtle feature differences as well. So I'd like to see it consolidate on, you don't really have to think about it. Up to a certain number will be the interactive Teams meeting, and beyond that number will be the broadcast only experience. But to your point, we're not there yet. You can choose an either or. I see most people choosing Teams meetings. I don't know what you see.
Well, and I guess I was wondering, like in your customer base, are people having success using the Teams webinar features with the registration? Because at least what I'm hearing is there seems to be some friction, or the features are still evolving. So I was interested to know what you've seen.
Yeah, I'm doing a few webinars where people are using that. Obviously, Microsoft partners tend to default to the Microsoft tools, and it's in the box, and it's not an add-on SKU, which is interesting when Microsoft doing all this monetization that they bundled that at standard license costs. I think one of the things I've heard is a problem is it shows the roster to everybody in the meeting. So it is ultimately a Teams meeting. So for customers that are worried about identities being shared, that's been a friction point. And the other thing is it's fairly complicated to integrate it into third-party CRM systems. You can kind of integrate it into Dynamics, but like most webinar platforms will go straight into things like HubSpot and Salesforce, like a click, and it's not so much that with Teams. So I think the Microsoft partners are very keen on it. It's in the box and it's on brand, but for marketing teams, I see them still liking those extra bits of gloss and control around the webinar experience.
Right. Okay. Well, no, that's great. Thank you for your observations.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, Randy, how's it going?
Not bad. You okay?
Yeah, we're all good here. We're all good. Thanks for joining us.
Excellent.
So,
thanks for having me.
So do you want to just talk us through your perspective on this Teams Pro versus Standard?
perspective, right? Okay. So my first perspective is that it was introduced really quickly. There was no warning whatsoever, apart from some leaks in the media and things like that. And then it was just suddenly, 1st September, or actually it was 6th September, I think it was, the blog post went live.
Yeah.
It's ta-da, we've got some new licensing. So that's the first observation. And two, the excuses of things like, we're cheaper than competitors just is a little bit weak. If they were honest and said, look, we've been charging too little all along, now we want to try and recoup some of that money back, then maybe I would buy it. But yeah, I just think it's a really interesting debate, and also pushing this freemium basic thing, which actually is missing all the features and all the management, I think is a real cop out as well. So I don't know what else anybody else is thinking, but Tom, I'd love your perspective on this as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was very fast. It's interesting. The Pro license even now doesn't have the management portal. So the management portal's coming in November. So it felt like the announcement was relatively early compared to the tech. And I think that probably came down to financial years and big enterprise agreements and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think Microsoft are just trying to get into that same price spot as Zoom sit, and Cisco obviously tend to be more, although I've spoken to a few of my Cisco friends and I haven't got quite a clear answer on one price for Cisco, because I think it varies depending on your contract. So I don't think Microsoft are miles out in terms of the price, but I can empathize with where you're coming from in terms of the announcement and the like, here you go, here's a massive uplift in your cost out of nowhere. Particularly if your renewal was at just the wrong time. If you've got a 3-year enterprise agreement locked in or something, that's one thing. But if you were just about to renew, it's a big sticker shock. Although, if you're a big customer, you obviously go and talk to Microsoft and negotiate based on that point. But still.
There's companies that are going from 5 to 6 and even 7 figures a year for licensing now, just because of a license increase. And, I get that the premium customers are saving a bit of money, but they're also losing what I think was the thing that got them over the line in the first place, the whole managed service.
Yeah, and I don't think they are, like you say, I don't think they are saving any money really, because they're going to have to still take that management cost on, so they'll push that to a partner or in-house. So their license spend has gone down by $10, but their total management costs will probably remain the same. Although Microsoft are touting a lot of AI management and automation and monitoring, so we'll wait to see how much that uplifts. But you're always going to need people in a room scenario, because there's the plugging in element to it and the hardware element to it, I think.
Yeah, but AI for the screen was unplugged. That's
maybe the AI the AI can concur, but it doesn't do much about plugging it back in for you, does it?
Yeah, and to me the whole portal, I've been using the premium portal for a number of years now in testing and stuff, and there's a lot of good stuff that's baked in there that I actually think should have been in the Teams Admin Center all along. To be real frank. And the fact that Android still isn't in the Pro portal or anywhere near it, and Android's on the rise when it comes to Teams rooms. There's so much happening. It's amazing.
The Android stuff's really interesting, because if you're an Android dominant customer, you don't immediately get a lot of value out of Pro as it stands today. So I think we'll look forward to Ignite and the roadmap and seeing where those gaps are going to be bridged. Hey, Ryan.
Hey guys. Yeah, I had a comment, maybe less about the pricing side. I think plenty of thoughts there. I just am personally really excited for customers to gain access to some of the tools that sit inside what historically was the managed service portal, the new Pro portal. So just having access to a software update framework and having the insights and reporting, and so I guess so many customers sat at standard without that tool set and had a real hard time. And so I know however we get there, there's opinions on how we get there, but and what should have been there, et cetera. But I'm excited that most customers are going to have access to a set of tools that's going to allow them to manage at scale in a more easy way, particularly around update framework and reporting and some of the AI.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And basically, if you're serious about this, you have to go pro. Either you're over 25 rooms or you care about management. So in
I
reality,
think all roads kind of lead to pro at this stage,
yeah.
whether
So
right now or in a little while. Yeah.
we're only going to have one customer experience and one management tool. Although, having said that, you've got all the ecosystem management overlay tools as well to consider. But I think generally the customer story gets a bit easier in a way because you only have one option, that's pro, unless you're putting out a couple of rooms for an SMB where they can run around and plug them in and reset them, then maybe basic plays. But even then you're losing all the smarts.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I think I'm with Randy here that I guess I can appreciate the concept of basic, but I don't think that the feature set supports even what a small customer would need.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the field, but yeah, I think you're probably both right. There'll be very limited deployments of basic, although they get to say we have a free option. It's a little bit token, maybe.
Super. And we got Simon wanted to comment. So Simon, could you drop into the call?
Yeah, I don't think we'll find too many requirements coming from the core IT teams, but there's definitely some business requirements out there. I think Randy in the chat you mentioned around the use in bank branches. I think that would be a really interesting one. But I think these niche use cases they'll be driven by the business, not by IT. I just don't think they have the time or the resources.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. As Randy said as well, it kind of came a little bit out of nowhere with the blog post, and then the text not quite there. That's the promise of pro. My only guess is it's to do with, as I say, financial years and lining up licensing. It must be a big change in Microsoft to get a license live, but from a customer perspective, that's not your concern. And still, we're not going to see all the features in pro immediately. We'll see at Ignite what the announcements are. So you're being asked to pay $40 a month from whenever you renew, but how long before you see the full value of that license?
Yeah, and it's like, are they really high quality contact center devices? So you could ship one, if you've got really high value contact center agents or sales agents, would they? You want to do really high quality touch. I certainly know from past experience, celebrities like to do video on customer service. So if servicing that, giving that agent that video, I know. I think Cisco used to make good traction out of, how certain celebrities had their was it DX80s? I think it was DX80s.
Yeah, good thoughts.
Thanks,
Simon.
What is one question I was thinking of slightly? I mean, it's involved in meeting rooms, but these new video displays that are in the Microsoft catalog.
Yeah. Teams display. Yeah, they're called Teams display.
I'd be interested to hear if anyone's got any experience actually using them, and what does the customer think? In terms of the, this kind of new category of video device, kind of hitting the meeting room.
Yeah, they are super interesting actually because they're a very unique device. So it's a phone form factor or bigger screen. So Neat have one, Yealink have one, and it's a dedicated Teams unit, so you can do video calls on it, you can do some limited collab on it, and I'm hearing two places where they're playing. It's the high-end execs, so like the people that used to have a dedicated Tamberg video conferencing unit, banks, legal, either they'd have it on their desk and one click and off they go, or they'd have it in their home office. That's the same type of user, and for that type of user, so Neat's frame is like $2.5 grand list, so it's not the cheapest device, but for that kind of customer that's fine because it's a dedicated unit and it's always there ready to go. And then I'm seeing some of them being put in hot desks as like a bit of video alongside what would have been a common area phone. So Crestron have a phone form factor one, an 8-inch and a 10-inch screen, so not a massive screen, but they're hitting like $600, $800, $900 mark. So it's like a fancy phone in a way. And I'm seeing some companies think about those for common area, but I think the primary use case is home. Hey, Randy.
Yeah, I think Teams Display, it's a form factor that's been trying to find a place to sit for a while. Obviously, as you said, we started with the little Lenovo thing, which is now end of life or discontinued, or a little bit of both. You said the neat frame. Crestron video phones now do Teams display. There's the Yealink one, which is probably going to go through certification soon, which is, I think, probably the best use case for what Microsoft intended for it.
Yealinks
is
the standard form factor monitor, isn't it? So, and I think
it's a 24-inch
screen as well,
with a charger, and you can flip it into screen mode and Teams display mode. So it's, for me, it's the perfect hot desk companion type of thing.
What are the customers saying? Does anyone have any experience of actually kind of the customer investing in this new tech and then loving it or hating it, or kind of?
I mean, they're only just coming through certification, so I think they haven't really been war tested. I know, talking to Neat, that they're seeing like it's people with the higher end budgets going for like either common area or for home use. That's what they're saying. The Lenovo one it's been around for a while, but that was very early days, a very small screen. So I think
really early days.
Yeah, exactly. Once they all come out and they're all certified, we'll see how the customers go. But I can definitely see, having supported large organizations with complex exec teams, I can see the value of an IT org having a device they almost can't break sitting at home that they hit, press to join. I've seen, execs mess up laptops and webcams and have the webcam pointing at the ceiling, or not know how to turn their laptop on. So just for that value, I think for some orgs it will make sense. Hey, Simon.
But the fact you can also turn like a Facebook portal into a Teams display.
Yeah, and that's interesting. A consumer device that can be a sort of semi-Teams device is an interesting line that's been crossed there.
Yeah, I agree with Randy. I think the competition is great. I do think they're probably at saturation point of the vendors, but I still think we're fairly immature in having the right devices across all the right categories in the right price point. I still think there's a lot of time to go on that, I do welcome the innovation. I think they've really stepped up over the last few years. So.
Yeah, education, I think, is another one potentially as well, particularly if there's a hot desking feature with it. Being able to go and sign in as your identity to get out your files and your chats and all that kind of stuff.
And I guess to your point, Simon, IT people instantly go, well, wait a minute, I can buy a Samsung monitor and a webcam and slap a PC on it, and I've got the same. That's such an IT way to look at it, right? Like rather than the total cost of ownership and the support and the end user experience. If you can drop ship a unit that has one plug and works and doesn't have Windows updates and all the other software on it, that's valuable to some people.
Well, here's one last question for you. In terms of hardware, if you go to the Teams catalog now, it's brimming with choice. When do we hit that tipping point when almost there's just too much choice, and it becomes a challenge really choosing which hardware vendor over the other? Who wants to take that first?
I guess you're almost at that point. It's interesting because Microsoft want an ecosystem. They want competition. They want options for customers. But they do often say with the certification program, if you're the X speakerphone, we're not just going to certify you to have another speakerphone. We want the vendors to bring innovation and new features and change. So I think depending on the technology, and you see this, they'll be excited to certify vendors for a new type of technology, but they don't want another headset vendor necessarily because they've got all the big headset vendors already. Randy, you'll have a good insight into this, I guess.
Yeah. There's obviously a lot of vendors for all the different categories, and obviously working for a vendor for the first time in my life, I kind of see inside and, kind of what the vendor actually looks at in terms of competition and, having a healthy respect. I think competition breeds excellence. I think, it challenges everybody to pull their socks up. When Neat launches something, or if Yealink launches something and suddenly Logi or someone else is looking at what they've done and trying to improve upon that, I think it's a great thing. I want there to be that innovation. And as to your point, Microsoft don't just want another headset vendor or another collab bar vendor. They want somebody that brings something really cool to the party, which is why they're you see the Jabber Panicast 50 on every bit of marketing thing that they've done recently, for whatever reason. But yeah, I think, having that competition is good. But I think there'll be a point where there's just too many vendors. I think we're going to get to a point, but in fact, I think we're probably close to that now, that the vendors that are in it are all constantly innovating and nobody's really stale. So bringing somebody new to the party is going to be a disruptor, but it's just giving too much choice, I think. But I could be wrong.
Well, I imagine as we approach the metaverse in the enterprise that we're going to get more and more hardware into the Microsoft Teams catalog going forward. I mean, including wearables, headsets, and all sorts. But that's maybe a bit further down the line. But I can imagine there's a lot coming on that one. Does anyone else have any final comments?
Look out for some virtual collab bars that are going to sit in the metaverse, branded with somebody else's tech. Yeah.
And that's it from us. If you've enjoyed today's session, please subscribe to UC Today News and give this video a quick share on social, as it's always appreciated. And if you're a Microsoft Teams fan and want to be part of the conversation, you can connect with Tom, myself, and the wider Teams community on LinkedIn and Twitter. And our social links are all in the description. Thanks again to everyone for joining in today. It's been smashing, and we'll be back again next month with another Microsoft Teams news update and Q&A. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.